Okay, welcome back everybody. I hope everybody had a great lunch. Today's class is going to be on the hyper growth strategies for sales departments. But before we go into that, let's just recap and talk about where we've come from. We started off the class talking about the segment of the market that we wanted to chase after, the low-hanging fruit. And we identified it by the way of inbound marketing. We didn't want to have to go out prospecting. The two first strategies that you should be building in your sales department are the inbound strategies, the passive strategies that you don't have to do a lot of prospecting for. And we identified them as the best in class way to get referrals and Google AdWords. And then we also set up the sales department, the starting off of your sales department, because we remember salespeople are built differently just like IT people. And there's hunters and there's farmers. And in the morning class, we talked about farmers and how to set up that farmer so he could have the best in class sales department doing the right jobs and doing them the right way. And then how can we monitor that? And then we talked about the two strategies. And then we built the pitch. And the pitch, we made it so it was provable and tangible. So we were number one or number two in every touch point that we were going after. Because the end game goal for us is to have people outsource their IT to us so they have a competitive advantage in their marketplace. And by going with our company, which is number one or number two in every single touch point, they not only get the benefits of outsourcing to an IT company so they can focus their time, their energy, and resources on their core competencies, but they're outsourcing to the number one IT company in the industry. And anytime somebody builds a best-in-class business case, that always beats a best-in-class personality. So what are we going to be doing in this class? In this class, we're going to scale up our sales department. We're going to talk about the two strategies for hypergrowth, which are the prospecting strategies or the outbound strategies. And then we're going to put it all together, talking about how we can train our sales team, how we can structure our calls. And then we'll follow up with any questions that you guys may have. So, sales department. In the morning class, we talked about the account development or the inbound strategies sales department side. And we talked about everything that the account manager had to do. So one thing that we need to discuss before we move forward is this account manager who's doing the job, he's doing all the inside stuff with your current client base, but then he wants to move over to a hybrid role, or he wants to start working more outside, because that's where all the cool stuff is, where all the winky-dink charm sales guys are, the hunters. But we need to explain to him and make sure that he or she understands, that if they're going to be moving into a hybrid role, they have to practice for 3 months first, because doing the inbound side, all the leads we're giving to them either through referrals or through Google AdWords. So all the hard work of separating an IT company from their client has been done, because that client no longer wants to be around that IT company. So all they had to do was talk to that person who was already looking around for a new IT company and give them the best in class pitch. So in a hybrid mode, they have to understand that they have to learn how and prove to you that they can prospect. And it's going to take about 2 hours per day, about 3 months for them to really get a good feel about whether they can do this or not. The other side of this is, when do you scale up this account manager? When do you decide that you need to hire a new account manager? Well, if you're using our point system, then once they hit past that 500 point system and they get 10% higher up to that 550 points per week, then you know they're at the red line and you need to scale back and split up the sales department. And the best way that I've seen this done is the dodgeball approach. You are the advocate on behalf of the new person, and your veteran rep, your account manager who's been there, is the other team, and he gets to pick first. So if you don't have your IT teams set up in pods, but they're just all one big massive IT people, then you let him pick first, then you pick on behalf of your new employee, and then he picks, and so forth and so on, until the IT teams are split up across the two account managers. But if they're going to be moving into this hybrid role, they have to do at least 2 hours, at least 1 hour, maybe 2 hours per day of prospecting. And then at the end of 3 months, they're going to understand if they can do this and they can generate leads based on this type of new call scenario. They should be able to get about 30 calls per day in this system. So as a hybrid rep, they're starting to move into this outside role, and whether they just want to stay in hybrid and work inside and outside, or they want to go straight to outside, they have to go into this first business development role, which is the outbound marketing role, and that's a prospector. The great thing about the prospector is they don't need a lot of training. They don't need a lot of ramp up time like your account manager does. They don't have to learn Quozal or Quotework or Excel. All they have to do is generate leads. All they have to do is pick up the phone 80 to 100 times per day and try and reach out and build relationships through prospecting. And in a couple of minutes, we'll talk about how they should be able to do that and the best-in-class ways to accomplish that. But once somebody's in their prospecting role, and it takes between 3 to 6 months on the pure prospecting role before they can move further, then they can get up into the finisher role. Now, let me separate these two for a second. The prospector is the entry-level position, and it's a level 1 position in the outbound side. And once they get promoted into the finisher or your closer, then they move to level 2 and they get like a 10% bump in their salary. Traditionally, when I see people come in, they start off at 35 to 45 and then they get bumped up to 45 to 55. I never see anything above 50 generally. Sometimes they get up to 55 depending on where you are at in the Northeast. It takes a while to get to your finisher role. You don't want anybody out there representing your company in a closing capacity that hasn't passed their test with you first. They have to prove themselves before they get into the level 2 position. So you do a mock presentation where they have to come in and sell both you, your head IT person, and whoever in the company is kind of tough to speak to. And you ramp up the stress a little bit in that conversation to try and understand how they can handle it. And if they can pass selling to you, and that's the most difficult part of it, then they can speak to a prospect. So just make sure that you have people train and have the people test before they go from prospector to finisher. So how does this scenario work in this pod? I call these pods. So you have your prospector. He's there 3 months. And once he gets to 3 to 6 months, he moves up into the finisher role. And then as you get your first finisher, you hire your next prospector. So everybody has to come in at the bottom, and then they get moved into the finisher role. So one pod looks like two finishers and one prospector. And then a sales engineer can handle the stage 1 or the inbound side, stage 2, and then one additional stage 2. So he can handle 3 pods as one sales engineer across all 3 teams. Now, after you get past this level, then you're bringing in your BD manager. That's when you bring in somebody who can manage this thing. Because up until then, right about this time, you're out of time. And we're going to explain the administrative side that you need to do to monitor these guys as you're getting there. But one caveat that I want to make sure that everybody understands here is there is a difference between managers, just like salespeople, just like IT people. The managers come in 2 flavors as well. You come in maintenance managers and executive managers. Don't hire an executive manager. Their salaries are too high and you don't need them past the first phase. An executive manager comes in and his job is to build your processes, build your department, and to continue to scale and grow and build processes. His job isn't to maintain order and make sure everything is working. That's the job of a maintenance manager, and they typically have lower salaries. Their job is not to build and be creative and find new strategies for growth. Their job is to maintain what you've already built and tweak it as it's necessary. I would suggest to you, if you don't have the processes in place for the growth strategies, then you hire somebody like Gary Pica or myself, somebody who could go in, set up your sales department, and then you can hire a maintenance manager. And you don't have to pay the salaries, the high salaries of these sales managers that are in executive roles. So now that we know how to set up the departments, and that's the way that you scale it up. So for the pods, the additional pods in the outbound strategies, you grow them in that pod scenario. Now that we know who these guys are, how do we hire these guys? How do we understand how we're going to hire them, maintain them, and understand what they're doing out there? Well, it turns out just like in the hunter or in the farmer role, the hunter role also has the same type of ways that you look at people as you're trying to hire them. You always have to make sure that they only have 2 jobs within 5 years. That's mandatory. You don't want to have somebody come in who's had multiple jobs in 5 years, because as soon as you train them up, they're going to be gone. The average tenure for a sales rep is 18 to 24 months. You don't want the average guy, because right as he starts getting good, he's going to cut bait and go somewhere else because he was bored or he wasn't being successful. Additionally, he has to have long sales cycle experience. On the prospecting side of this, the sales cycles can get pretty long. From 3 to 6 months is the typical average on the prospecting side. So he has to have long sales cycle experience, and he's got to be in the top 25%, and it's got to be proven, and he's got to have an established quota. And if he's in the top 25%, and he's in a long sales cycle industry, and he's only had 2 jobs in the last 5 years, then he can make it to your desk. That's how he gets past the administrative assistant who talks to him, understands the general gist of what he's doing, and if he or she makes it past all of that, then you get to him and you interview him. If whoever screens your applicants doesn't know, or it wasn't well established if there was a 25% quota, that's okay. You can find that out in the interview. But the other two are hard and fast. They have to have long sales cycle experience, and they have to only have 2 jobs in 5 years. Anything else, and you start to increase your risk for the investment that you're going to make here. So the other class, we said you wanted to hire the smile and train the skill. In this class, it's different. You want to hire the talent and train the skill. And it's a different way of looking at things. So let's take a look and see what we're really talking about when I say hire the talent. When you hire the talent, what you're doing is you're looking for key things that hunters naturally do. And it can't be something like, sell me this pen. Historically, sell me the pen was a good stressor question that people would ask to understand how they handled not only a stressful situation, but their sales talent behind it. Now, sales reps are ready for the sell me the pen question. So it's no longer a stressor question that makes them kick into their gut and understand what they're going to really be saying in a talented way. So you're going through the interview and you're asking your typical questions. Give me an example of the time where you did something really fantastic and how did you do that? Or give me an example of a time that you thought you were really going to get this deal and it fell through, and what did you have to do? All those type of typical questions that you're going through. And then midway through the interview, you stop and you say, you have a lot of experience here and you seem like you're a very talented rep, but our industry is unique, and I just don't know if you would be able to manage the learning curve and be successful in this industry. Then you stop. The next words out of his or her mouth will tell you if this person has talent in the hunter capacity. If they say, I can see where you're coming from, however, this is why I could do it. So you're looking for empathy, and then you're looking for a rebuttal. If they give empathy and rebuttal, they're talented and they naturally come across when you throw them an objection that is a stressor objection. You basically just told them that they wouldn't be a fit here. If they handled it with empathy and then moved forward, you got yourself somebody that you need to consider strongly. So that type of question, to understand how they handle objections in a stressor environment, is one of the key tools that you can use to find out if they have talent or not. And then the last thing, if you find somebody that's been promoted in their same job and they got more money to be in that the next role up, there's somebody you have to take very seriously. A lot of risk is reduced with people who have been promoted in their same job before. So what do these guys do? Well, they prospect. They prospect inside, they prospect outside, on the phone, wherever they can do, they're always prospecting. So that's the number. They don't have to sit there and learn Quozal. They don't have to sit there and learn a lot of the stuff on the inside. They just have to learn your products, your features and benefits, and then they can go in and start making a valuable contribution to you to try and get you leads. The other thing that you have to make sure of is that within the second month that they're employed by you, they need to have their first project either likely to close or closed. If you are a company that doesn't do projects outside of the MSP, then this is null for you. This is void. You just have to wait for the third month when they should have likely to close or about to close or close their first MSP deal. It'll be a smallie, but it'll be their first one's closed in 3 months. That's when you should know that they're really getting onto it. But here's the thing that we have to talk about before we move on, and it's the loss lines. It's the loss limiter lines. When do you know when this person's doing a good job, or when do you know you need to write them up or eventually fire them? And it's a pretty standard metric. So we know we'll just use $5,000 as our investment that we're investing into these reps. They have their salary, their benefits, all the cogs that are associated with them. So we'll use 5,000. So month one, you hire him. You spend $5,000 on his salary and everything. They don't produce anything for you. It's an investment. Month two, you entered into another $5,000, and now he's $10,000 in the hole to you. And if you don't do projects, he's $10,000 in the hole. Month three, he should be closing his first MSP deal. So in month three, you are now $15,000 in the hole to the salesperson. And if they close their first MSP, and it's a mid-size MSP deal, we'll use $2,000 a month, he is now not at $15,000 in the hole, he's $13,000 in the hole. And then next month, you give him another $5,000, but he's not $20,000 in the hole, because remember, he sold an MSP last month, so he's only $18,000 in the hole. And if he sold another MSP this month, he's not $18,000 in the hole, he's $16,000 in the hole. But if they're not closing any deals for you during that time, once they hit 4 times COGS, or 4 times your monthly investment, they get their first write-up, and it's a first warning. If they hit 5 times COGS, then that's their second and final warning. If they hit 6 times COGS, it's an automatic termination. Now, this doesn't matter if they've been employed with you for 6 months or 60 months. If they hit those loss limited lines, they're done. You're never going to recoup your money from these types of people. If they're not the type of people that can close deals, then you will find that out in the first 6 months. If they're doing all of their work every single day, if they're making the calls, if they're doing the proposals, if they're hungry individuals, the law of large numbers states that they will never hit those low numbers. They'll get something for you. And as long as they're as long as they're not crashing through the bottoms of those lines, 4 times COGS and 5 times COGS and 6 times COGS, then you have something to work with, and you got to keep going. You got to keep trying to get your investment back out. And then finally, how do we measure this? Again, we do it through the activity point system. You do it through ConnectWise and the setup tables, and I've given you that in the playbook. And you should know within the first 2 months, they should be at 500 points a week. Because remember, they don't have all these other things that they have to learn and understand. They just have to understand the features and benefits of your company and how you guys do things. And they can learn that within the first 6 to 8 weeks. By the end of the 8th week, they should be at 500 points per week. Month 3, they are 100% better be at 500 points per week, or you're going to have to really understand why they're not. It's something, if they don't get their 500 points per week, it's very difficult for them to get the closed business on the back end. It's what you put in is what you get out. So just keep those things in mind when you're looking at this hunter, when you're looking at trying to bring in this hunter role. Those are the types of things that you really need to look for when you're interviewing them. And it takes a while to interview these guys. I've seen it take 4 months to find your perfect candidate, 5 months to find your perfect candidate. If you get lucky, then it can happen earlier. But don't get scared away when you're 3 months in, 4 months in, and you still haven't found the perfect candidate. They're out there. But wait. Make sure you get the right guy, because if you don't, it's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of time to bring him on. Him or her not be worth anything. After 6 months, you're going to fire them, and you're going to have to start all over again. Invest the time up front, and you'll reap the rewards on the back end. So who are these hunters? Who are these guys? They come in, they're the disruptors. They come in, they talk to the IT people. Right when the IT person is trying to solve a critical ticket, they want to talk about the New England Patriots or something. But what do these guys really do? How do they make all their money? Well, it turns out they spend their week like this up here. 68% of their day, their week, their month is spent prospecting. And prospecting is broken down into 68% of the time. In that 68% of the time, 20 to 30% of it is spent calling on new people that they've never spoken to before. And the other 70 to 80% is spent in follow-ups. And this is the keys to success with our company, is in this follow-ups, because there's a lot of wasted follow-ups in there. And we're going to talk about that and how we can fix that. So the second part of this is all the way down on the bottom here, the admin time, the administrative time. And quick note to you guys, sales managers, when they're first brought on, new sales managers, or sometimes new owners when they don't understand how to work with salespeople, they try and cut the administrative time. So because everybody understands that the more you prospect, the more deals you get in the pipeline, and the more deals you're able to close eventually. So everybody's trying to prospect more and have less administrative time. But this is pretty much the base that you can do for administrative time, because you have to do your daily morning huddles with your employees. You have to do your weekly sales meeting. It's generally on Monday mornings. You have to do your weekly one-on-ones with your employees to find out where their head's at, how they're doing, how was last week, how was this week. And then finally, and most importantly, you have to do the weekly sales training, and it's generally on Friday afternoons. Sales training is the most important part of your salesperson's livelihood. Because think about this. In sales, it's just like any other profession out there. But in the sales world, we're only doing our job. We're only active 12 to 13% of the time. We're only dealing with clients, our prospects, 12 to 13% of the time. And it's just like your firefighters, or it's just like your NFL players. Your NFL players play a game on Sunday for 4 hours, but they practice Monday through Friday all day just so they can be there for that Sunday game and be the best they can be. They get their money on Sundays, but they earn their money on Monday through Fridays. So your salespeople are the same way. So they have to practice like they want to perform, because you better damn well be sure that they're going to be in there making sure that they perform like they practice. You have to take the practice very importantly, so the performance is even better. So just make sure that you keep these guys training at a minimum of 1 hour per week, and it's usually Friday afternoon. And at the end of this class, I'm going to show you the algorithm or the steps that you guys should be using to train your sales reps. So we talked about this prospecting 68% of the time, and we talked about administrative side, and it's 20% of the time. So what's this middle one? This ASC. It's the active selling cycle. It's the time where you are actually dealing with people who want to speak to you, whether it's on a phone appointment, it's an on-site, it's the second on-site because something happened, the proposal meeting, the T's and C's meeting, or their follow-up at the very end where they're trying to find out if they won the deal, if it's old, if it went dark, what happened to it. That time spanned across weeks and months takes about a total of a 10-hour investment, 8 to 10 hour investment in time, spread out over weeks and months. But that active selling cycle, that ACS, is only 12 to 13% of their time. Think about that. They spend most of their time dealing with people who don't want to deal with them just so they can spend 13% of their day working on deals. So you're spending 88% of your dollars that you spend on this guy is spent not talking to people who want to talk to him. So it's very important to make sure you're doing it in the most profitable way that you can. Every sales manager out there in the world, or owner for that matter, everybody knows that the more you prospect, the more you get in your pipe. But the good sales managers are out there, they're trying to decrease the prospecting time and increase the active selling cycles, the pipe. And here at Osprey Strategic Research, we found the way to do it in this industry, and it's through the contract end date selling system. And that right there is the secret sauce. That is the difference maker in our industry, and I'm going to show you why it's so unbelievably important in our industry. So the sales ability, every manager out there is trying to measure their reps and improve their reps by their sales ability, which is through training. You try and make your sales ability up to 100%, the best that they can be, times how many people that they can get on the phone that are decision makers. And then that equals appointments in this industry. are in most industries. And that's the general formula that they're always trying to do. They're trying to find more people that they can speak to on the phone, and they're always trying to make their sales rep better. And if you multiply those, you get what your percentage is to close, how many appointments you're going to get versus how many people you speak to. But in our industry, it's different. In our industry, you only have a 3-month window of availability where you can actually speak to somebody who in turn can give you an appointment, because we are in a contract regulated industry. So let's take a look up at this graph right here. This is 2015, 2016, 2017, and then on the top line it's January through December. So what I'm showing you here is if you call somebody in January, and we know they only have about a 3-month window of availability where their contract's coming up for review, and they're in a 2-year contract, what are the odds? What's the probability that when you call them in January, they're within that contract review time? Well, it turns out if it's a 2-year contract, it's about 12.8% probability that they will be within their contract end date. So even if you have the best salesperson in the entire world, and even if you got somebody on the phone who is a decision maker and they said, you know what, this sounds like a fantastic idea, you still only have a 12.8% chance of getting an appointment because they're not within their window of availability. Right here is the reason why people are moving to 3-year contracts, because it drops the percentage down to 8%, and it's very hard for people to get in this industry if they only have an 8% return on their investment. But it's not even 8%, because it's even worse than that. In our industry, if you make 100 calls, and this is a typical metric. I've seen it a heck of a lot worse, and I've seen it a little bit better, but this is average. If you make 100 calls, you're going to speak to 10 decision makers on the phone. And then out of those 10 decision makers, you're only going to have 1 appointment. That is what the typical metric is in our industry, because we're so contract heavy. But if you change this around, and if you move this into a contract end date selling system, then you've turned this thing in from 100 calls to 10 decision makers to 1 appointment, and you can increase that by 5-fold. So let's talk about how we can do that for people. This screenshot, this part of our PowerPoint presentation is the typical way that you have to do your first call. When you go in to a presentation on the phone and you're calling up these prospects all the time, how do you get them to engage on the phone where you're trying to, improve the relationship and get yourself an appointment? Well, every salesperson in the world knows that when they make a prospecting telephone call, after they do the introductions, the first thing that they have to do is do a compelling statement or a hook that leads straight into a feature. Every sales rep knows this. Every sales rep has to get them to buy in and have a compelling statement in those first 10 to 15 seconds. And the hook gets them right into the features. And the features are the facts, the statistics, the description. So the car can go 50 miles an hour in 3 seconds. The car has AM/FM radio. The car has 4 wheels. The car has leather seats. Those are all features of a car. So, but the thing that most reps do when they're just learning how to do this is they go from hook to feature, which was great. Then they gave another feature, and then another feature, and another, and another, and another, and they just keep on giving features. It's called feature dumping. It's called showing up and throwing up. And it's the number one thing that you can fix with your sales reps to get an immediate return on your investment for them to start getting better quality telephone calls. The second thing that they do is they typically give their favorite features and not the feature that they're supposed to be giving to the prospect. You give your features based on the title of the prospect that you're speaking to, not to the favorite features that you like most about your company. You have to speak to them. They don't have to listen to you. So we just have to make sure that we understand that. So the features, which are descriptions of your company or your touch points like we talked about in the first class, have to be built towards the title of the person that you're getting to. Now, the second part of this, and I feel that this is the most important part of the call, is the bridge or the transition statement, where you take the person from the feature to the benefit. And the benefit is the emotional buy-in. The benefit is where the sales reps, these gladiators of the Coliseum, make all their money, and they make you all your money. But there's a specific way, a best-in-class way, and there's no deviation from this. The best-in-class way to do your transition statement from feature to benefit is what that means to you, name. So what that means to you, John, is, and two things happen when you say this. The first is you're speaking directly to them in a reward-centric way. It goes right to their limbic system, the primitive part of their brain, the fight or flight, the help or hinder part of their brain. And you told them that they are going to get a reward for listening to what you're about to say. You will gain their undivided attention for the time that you're going to tell them what you're about to tell them. So the second thing about this that makes it so powerful is you use the number one word in their vocabulary, the most powerful word in their vocabulary, which is their name. You will see people stop looking at their watch if you're face to face. You'll see them stop looking at the contract. You will see them lean in anticipation of what you're about to say. And then finally, they get to the benefit. Now, the benefit side is the emotional tie-in, and only about top 5% reps do this correctly. The benefit, again, has to be tied in to the title of the person that you're speaking to, not to what you want to talk about. And you have to do it to their title and what they find beneficial, not what the company finds beneficial. If you go to an IT manager and say you're going to save them $50,000 a second at their company, he doesn't really care, or she doesn't really care. They care about the benefits that they're going to get for saving the company money. That's what they care about. Now, if you say you're going to be able to save this, the company $50,000 per second to the CEO, now he cares about that. So you have to make sure that you're building your benefits and your features to the title of the person you're speaking to, so they get the reward, not the company. The company doesn't get the rewards. The person across from you gets or the person across from you or on the phone gets the rewards. After that, you go straight into the trial close. And the trial close, now keep in mind, we've talked about the hook, the feature, the transition statement, the benefit, the trial close. All this took about 25 to 35 seconds. It doesn't take that long, and it's establishing your credibility as a caller, not as a friend. You're not trying to establish a friendship, you're trying to establish your status power. So once you do your trial close is you're trying to set an appointment based on the information you gave. And the trial close, there's two ways to do trial closes. There's a passive way and an assertive way. The passive way says, I was wondering if you had time on your calendar next week, maybe we could have some coffee or something. That's a passive way. And we don't want to do it because statistically you're not going to get as many closes. You want to say it in an assertive way. John, this looks like we have a good connection here, and it makes sense for us to sit down. Do you have time next Tuesday or Wednesday? Which one of those works best for you? When you do it in an assertive way, they're going to come back to you with an objection, because if you say it in a passive way, it's easy for them to say no because they don't have to think about it. The easiest path to them is a no, and once you start building up those no's, you can't, as a sales rep, knock the no wall down. But if you say it in an assertive way, he's going to give you a no, but he's going to give you a no with an objection. No, that doesn't really work for me because of this. Now, here's where the salespeople start really getting into it, because once he says no, that's his first objection. He gives the reason for the no, and you've just opened up the conversation, and this is where all the conversation or relationship is built, in the objection stage. Now, if you can't get past the objections, and you try 2 to 3 times to get past the objection, if you cannot get past the objection, we already know what the reason is. Even if he says it's because they're loyal or their neighbor's kid does it, they're usually in a contract. So what you do is you add in this contract end date selling script into here so you can find out when an appropriate time to call is. So they say, we're all set, right? The number one objection out there in any industry is we're all set. And you say, I can understand that. I bet you guys are even in a contract, aren't you? Yes, we are. Well, look, here at ABC Company, we take a different approach. We want to provide value to you when it's appropriate to you. So whether that's 2 years from now or next month, we want to provide the value to you to show you an apples-to-apples comparison about the value in the philosophy that has made us so successful with our clients when it's important to you. when is your contract end date, and I'll reset up this conversation for then, so we can just show you a competitive proposal and show you all the new trends and values that are out there at that time. The response is overwhelming, and you will, that's it's just as simple as that. Inserting that verbiage into your scripting and your conversation is going to quadruple your appointments over time, because they believe in the value of it as well, because they need a competitive proposal. They want to know what the new value is, and they got you off the phone right now when it doesn't make any sense to have a conversation anyway. So you've built up the relationship, you've given them value, and you found out some important information that you're going to need. So what do you do after this? Then this is where you find out the pain response. This is where you find out how you're going to continue the call the next time you talk to them. So now we find out, once you're giving them the information, you say, hey John, here's my contact information. Okay, here's your contact information. If you have any need for us, if you need a second set of eyes on the target, or if you need a competitive proposal, we don't mind doing that. We'll do that for you. And well, we'll keep in touch until the time comes when we need to set up this appointment. Does that sound okay? Great. In their mind, the call has just ended, and now is when you enter in your pain response, and it's an off-the-cuff curiosity conversation. Hey John, just out of curiosity, what would have to happen for you to really consider leaving your current IT company? The call's over. He's no longer has his walls up. He's no longer defending himself, and he will answer the question. And either way he answers the question is either going to be his perceived fear or his real pain. Either way, you have now found out everything you need to know. You found out when their contract end date was. You got his contact information. You found out who the decision maker was. And you found out what the pain was in the company. If your rep is doing this, you need to put him in the corner office. You need to give him the best parking spot in the whole company, because he is going to make you a whole boatload of money doing this for you. And that system right there is what is going to change you from doing it the old way, where you have 68% of your time you're prospecting, to 48% of your time prospecting, because you've gotten rid of all the bad follow-ups. All those follow-ups where they say, call me back at the end of the quarter, call me back at after tax season, near December, call me back after school lets out. All those wasted follow-ups are now addressed, and you have made it a laser-focused approach to getting your appointments. And your active selling cycle over time, it's going to take between 6 to 12 months, usually around 9 months you start seeing the fruits of your labor. You will take your active selling cycle from 12 to 32%. Now, when you call those 100 people and you get 10 decision makers, 50% of them you're going to get traction with, either in an appointment or a contract end date. So now when you speak to somebody, 50% of the time you're getting a yes in some capacity. It's no longer 9 no's and 1 yes. Now you're getting 1 to 1, and it makes your reps happier. Now, you're not going to get buy-in in the very beginning. They're going to say, I don't care what's going on in 9 months. All they're really concerned about is getting the appointments right then. You have to make sure they're getting buy-in. So in your activity point system, you give extra points for getting their contract end date, and you track how many contract end dates they got. And you'll build this giant Excel sheet where you are just tracking contract end dates. You'll have January, you'll have 20 contract end dates that you're chasing in January, February, March. You'll get to the point when your reps really start buying into this, where all they're doing is chasing contract end date after contract end date, and they're no longer making all these wasted follow-up calls. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. It turns you into a commodity. Because the number one thing that people hear when they hear apples to apples comparison, when the contract's coming up for review, is price to price comparison. We all understand that. And unless you are in the tier 3 company where your value is your low price, like Walmart, which is a great company, then it's going to be hard for you to fight this battle. So what we did was we came up with a laser-focused relationship marketing campaign that focuses on these contract end dates. And these contract end dates, you build a group inside of ConnectWise. And I'm not going to go through all the steps. They're inside the playbook. But I'm just going to give you the broad overview of what you need to understand. Every quarter, you are dripping on these people. You are sending them out an email campaign that gives them a good content. And every quarter it's the same. First month is a video, second month is a case study, third month is an industry article, and then quarter two you do the same thing again. Video, case study, industry article. And the way that you have your sales rep set up and your inside guy, your account manager, your farmer can build these programs because they no longer require coding. You can do it all in a plug and play fashion with your content. And it's going to take about 10 hours per month for them to do this, and the results are going to be very significant for you. First thing you need to do is you need to go to coffeecup.com and use their product. There's other products out there. I like Coffee Cup the most because it most resembles MailChimp, and I like it a lot. So you get coffeecup.com. Then what you're going to do is you're going to create your content on your blog. You're going to create an email campaign that talks about your blog post, and the email campaign will be sent out to all of your clients. But here's the trick. You have to track that email. You're tracking who's opening the email and what links they're clicking on. And to do that effectively, you either use Next2, Joom Connect, or Yellow Bus. My favorite is Yellow Bus because you get all the things that you need, all the features that you need for free. It integrates right into ConnectWise, and it creates activities based on who opened up the email and who clicked on what link. So your hunter then gets stuff that pops up in his activities. When XYZ company opened up the email and clicked on the link, he knows about it immediately, and he knows how to handle that call based on what link was clicked. And the last thing I have over here is the two videos companies that you can use. I use Powtoons. There's also a GoAnimate. I like Powtoons better. Powtoons is what we used to build our video for the Road to Reinvention contest like last year. It's an animated video, and it's really catchy right now, and it's still at the top of the trend as far as best-in-class ways to capture attention from people. So the last thing, the structure of the sales call that I want to make sure that we all understand here. When you're training your reps, you have to make sure that when you're teaching them how to prospect, when you're teaching them how to do the features, transition, benefits, which is the FTB up there, you want to train the features, transition, benefits to the title. And the way that you do that is you build a matrix, and you have columns. One column's called your C level, which is your CEOs, your CIOs, your CTOs. Then you have a column for Ds, for the director levels, and then you have a column for the manager level. And then you list all your touch points along the other column, whatever you have as a touch point, whatever you have as a feature. And then you identify what features belong to what title. And then you start practicing that. So you give people scenarios of, okay, this is going to be a 30-person company. You're going to be speaking to the CEO. They currently outsource this, this, and this. And then you're going to be talking, this is going to be your first call. And you have these cue cards built up, and they practice this way and train this way, and you coach them this way, and you're checking to make sure that they didn't feature dump. They did the transition. They went to the benefit. They did a trial close. It was an assertive trial close. They got to the contract end date. And you practice this over and over and over, and until it becomes rote, until they understand how easy it can become as they're going through it. You want to make sure they're doing 90 calls a day, and they're getting those contract end dates. The phone appointments, some people do phone appointments and some people don't. You don't have as much success on a phone appointment with people picking up as you do with going on on-site. They typically tend to be more bought in, and they have more of an immediate need for on-sites. But sometimes you have to do a phone call first, for whatever reason. And so your goals of the phone call are you have 3 goals for the phone call. You want to make sure that it's a good fit, they're within your wheelhouse, and they're not jerks on the phone to you or your employees. And you don't really need to budget test as much. You need to find out, if you can, what type of IT company setup they have, so you understand. That's how you find out the budget without asking them for a budget question right at the beginning of the relationship. And then you do an assertive close to the next step. And then on the on-site, we all understand you run the net detective. The pitch only needs to be about 20 minutes. The rest of the time is for Q&A and walking around the office. You should be in and out of there in an hour. If you're into an hour and a half, it better be because they are the talkers, not you. Your job is to go in there and improve their productivity and efficiency, not to be, talking all over them. And then finally, when you're doing the proposal, you make sure that you use an ROI calculator so you can show them the tangible results of your investigation, not just the net detective report or the highlights of the net detective report, but also the return on your investment. Because remember, you asked them who their current company was, and you tried to get the contract from them. And about 40 to 50% of the time, they'll give you the current contract and redact the prices and even the name. You don't care what the name is of the competitor because you're going to look inside the contract and see all the things that you're better at versus them and be able to prove it in an ROI calculator. And then the long thing is you want to make sure that when you're following up with these people that you're not needy. You don't want to put yourself into a beta position. You know the guys that I'm talking about. They keep calling you even though you've blown them off multiple times. And even if you did want to work in this industry with somebody like them, you wouldn't work with them because they're so desperate for you. Why? So you wouldn't work with them anyway. So don't be that needy, desperate guy. Those are the steps. Now, as you're teaching these guys in your sales training, you are not allowed to move past the prospecting stage until the people can handle it. Once they know what they're doing in that stage, then you move on to the phone appointment stage, and then everybody has to practice that. Once they get through that, then they move on to the on-site. It could take weeks to move from stage to stage to stage. And then once you get done with the follow-up, you start all the way back again with the proposal or with the prospecting, and you just keep doing it every single week, going through it. And the training becomes the foundations for their success, and they will be the best sales reps in the area, and they'll be yours. Last thing, guys, the return on investment. What you should be getting for all this time that you're putting in. Your salesperson, I told you, should be costing you, between $45,000 and $55,000, no more than 50, depending on your market. When you send out these email campaigns, 15% of the people that receive them should open them, and in those 15%, 1% should be clicking on all of your links. That's where you want to be generally. So now if you're around those, it's going to be some months you're going to have better content than other months, and that's fine. And you want to be less than 0.5% unsubscribes. And that'll measure itself out over time. In the beginning, you'll have a lot more unsubscribes, but then you'll start to get people who have either put it in the junk folder or they like to get the information from you. The contract end dates. You're going to get contract end dates about 40% of the time that you speak to a decision maker. So if you have 10 contract end dates, 5 of them are going to immediately give you an appointment, and then eventually another 50%. So 7.5 appointments out of 10 will give you an appointment at the appropriate time. You lose a little bit of it because people quit their jobs or something happens, or you miss the date. Because you went in there too late and the incumbent already flipped the contract. Those are the most times that it takes. And then for the email campaign to set it up, it's going to take you about 10 hours per month. And that includes building the content in the journalistic way. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please send them over to me. My phone number is 203-872-7701, or you can reach me by email at rrogers@ospreystrategicresearch.com. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I hope you had a great time during this presentation. Thank you.